Welcome to Webcertain TV. When thinking about creating web content for a US audience, most businesses will naturally focus on the English language. Yet, the rapidly growing population of native Spanish speakers in the country means that neglecting this language could result in missed opportunities. To give us more insight into this, Rebecca Mendoza is with me now. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Patty.
So, how big is the Hispanic population in the US and how fast is it growing?
Right. So in the US right now, it's about 54 million US Hispanic population, and the total population is about 320 million people. So that's about 17%. And in terms of how fast it's growing, and there's been several studies done. The US Census is done every 10 years. But even since then, in the last 5 years, we've been able to get some good trends, and it's growing quickly. It slowed down a bit from 2010. It was projected in 50 years' time, the US Hispanic population would be up to 130 million. Now it's projected to slow down a bit, and by 2015 it should be about 100 million or just over that. But a fun fact that I've recently learned is that in between July 2012 and July 2013, the US population grew by 2.3 million people, but 1.1 million were Hispanic.
Okay.
So if that gives you any indication of how big the actual market is and how fast it's growing, it's really huge.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what opportunities does this community present to businesses targeting the US market, either US businesses or international ones?
If you think about 54 million people and 54 million people spending money, that's a lot of money. They estimate the latest figures, which were taken from last year, that have come out about purchasing power for US Hispanics is about $1.5 trillion to combined purchasing power for US Hispanics. And what that actually means, because you think, what is a trillion? If you've spent $1 million from the day Jesus was born, this is a fun analogy, from the day Jesus was born, you still wouldn't even have $1 trillion. So if that puts anything into perspective. So, and it's a lot of money, a lot of younger Hispanics also. The average age is roughly 28, 29, really tech savvy. So really big on a lot of money, a lot of opportunity to be spent.
Okay. Are there any key characteristics of the online behavior of Hispanic web users in the US? And any notable differences between other US residents?
Sure. They're very social. Culturally, Hispanic families, they come from Latin America, even some from Spain, that are very very social by nature. They're very family oriented. They hug their family, they kiss their friends on the cheeks, and they're always surrounded by people. And that sort of activity translates also to their online behavior. So they're a lot more involved in social media. They spend more time on technology, talking to family abroad, talking to family that may not be as close, even talking, just being in constant communication online. So they spend more time on average than non-US Hispanics on social media. More people, about 80% of the population, have smartphones. 80% of the Hispanic population in the US have smartphones, and a very sizable number of them engage in online shopping. So more than other minorities or non-Hispanics, the more social online, the more active they're willing to use technology.
And which cultural factors need to be considered when targeting these demographics online?
Right, so with the US Hispanics, it's important to know not everyone's first generation, so just new to the US from their home country. But for example, like me, I'm third generation, yet I'm still considered Hispanic, and I still consider myself Hispanic. So you have to think, this whole 54 million people that are culturally diverse. The term ambicultural is out there to kind of describe people like us who are very American, but also kind of rooted in a different culture and have different cultural beliefs that, you know, when compared to American culture. We're also very tech savvy. We're very engaged online. We're early adopters of a lot of technology and new products that are out. You know, you see a lot of Hispanics, you know, just really trying to get the most they can out of technology and try to be kind of the first people to do it. But it, you know, if you consider the culture, I think is the biggest aspect, and you can't just say, right, I want to target, you know, people that have come from Mexico and their family and do all Mexican kind of style ads. You have to consider the Americanness and the Hispanic culture behind that also, and try to find something that fits that. And really, it's about being really super hyper local to a particular age group or demographic that you're looking at. So general targeting isn't really going to work in this instance.
So now what about the language? Should businesses offer Spanish content? And if so, you know, which variants of the language?
I wish it was a very straightforward answer and saying yes, do it, or no, don't do it. Again, to follow up with my previous question, it really depends on the person. For example, I'll use myself as a personal example. I prefer stuff being in English. However, I appreciate maybe when a company mixes English and Spanish and maybe has something quite witty, and that really appeals to me, and I believe people kind of in my situation. But maybe that wouldn't appeal to someone like my grandmother who only speaks Spanish. So it's really knowing exactly who you want to target and what language those people speak.
Okay. And what about any tips? Do you have any tips for how brands can actually engage with the Hispanic audience and stand out from other brands?
Yes, a few tips that you may have heard before, but being, in addition to, you know, traditional marketing techniques, you know, like blog posts and plain text things, with US Hispanics, it may work, but we're seeing conversion rates go lower and lower and lower over time. And I think that's probably a general thing over all kinds of different demographics. They're more visual, they're more into technology. They want to see videos, images, things that engage them a bit more that they can share. So if you think, you know, your social strategy, think about that. And there's so many people engaged on Facebook, on Twitter, on other sorts. The young Hispanic professionals is growing, so you can think about LinkedIn and other social networks and try to really upgrade your social strategy. It's also important to think of culture. A lot of Hispanics don't just want something generic that says Mexico on it or Puerto Rico or something. They want something that positively that is a positive reflection on their culture. That's something they can relate to, and things that are maybe things from their background, things that they grew up around that has very big cultural resonance sit really well with this demographic. And they're one of the few demographics where few kind of ethnicities or races where they're still very involved in their own culture and very persistent on keeping their culture alive, whereas a lot of other cultures are more, you know, wanting and willing to be more American and fitting into this American ideal. Latinos or Hispanics in the US kind of want to maintain that identity, and they're very proud. We are very proud people. So keeping all that in mind, the cultural aspects, the social aspects, the linguistic aspects, and really finding that specific type of person you want to target and making sure you tick all those boxes to have the best strategy possible.
And what about from the e-commerce perspective? Do Hispanics engage in online shopping? And if so, how do they like to buy goods online?
Yes, they do. I think I mentioned already, about 80% of Hispanics have smartphones. A bit of a smaller percent have tablets, and a lot of those people engage in online shopping. They are I think about over half of those people that have tablets and smartphones shop online, with the average kind of basket purchase between $25 and $100. So it's there's a lot of potential out there for people targeting US Hispanics, for companies targeting US Hispanics via mobile, via tablet. And, things like Groupon and Living Social are also gaining in popularity among this demographic, and you see a lot of people really engaging in buying things even through social media. Someone might put on an ad or something they bought, and more people engage with it. So if you think of it like that, it's important to have the strategy, important to market to mobile users, to tablet users, because they're there and they're willing to buy, and the purchasing power is there. So if companies really want to succeed, they'll think of all those factors.
That's great. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for sharing your insights with us.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.